Hey everybody, welcome back to Vertical MRO. I'm your host, Val Medved. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Ephraim Nowak, a pioneering innovator in uncrewed aircraft systems, or UAS, and a co-founder of RAIN. Growing up in British Columbia, Canada, Nowak was profoundly influenced by the 2003 Okanagan Mountain Park firestorm, which inspired his groundbreaking work in autonomous drone technology. There's a mouthful. In 2019, Nowak and his co-founders developed the MK1 prototype, achieving the world's first fully autonomous drone system capable of detecting and suppressing wildfire ignitions across approximately 40 acres of forest. As an incident commander and emergency medical technician with extensive search and rescue experience, Nowak brings a unique perspective to the intersection of technology and emergency response. Join us as we dive into this remarkable journey of transforming the drone technology to address critical environmental and safety challenges. I'm Val. This is Vertical MRO. Let's get this started. Special thanks to our sponsors for this podcast:
Safe Structure Designs,
Metro Aviation, and Robinson Helicopter Company.
Welcome to the Vertical MRO Podcast, brought to you by Vertical HeliCASTS.
All right, everyone, you're ready for contact. You're cleared to the Bravo.
The Vertical MRO Podcast explores the fascinating world of helicopter maintenance, repair, and overhaul with your host, Val Medved.
Atlanta altimeter 3029, approved as requested.
The podcast features helicopter technicians, mechanics, engineers, and MRO experts who share invaluable industry insight, knowledge, and stories that will inspire current and aspiring industry maintainers.
Well. Back here on Vertical MRO is Val Medved here, world traveled and a little more educated on where we fit in the grand scheme of things here. And with me today, I have my good and reliable co-host, Mr. Scott Hayward. Say what's up, Scotty.
Hey, Val. Thanks for having me on today. Appreciate it.
Glad to have you back, brother. The shine's looking pretty good, man.
The shine. Yeah, well, it doesn't grow back as you age.
Oh, this is just a toupee.
Yeah, okay.
How are things out in Kelowna there, man?
Things are going good. It's a mild winter. Heli skiing's happening. Had a bit of traffic trouble in Kelowna today. I think we'll make international news, but other than that, we're doing pretty good.
The lonely guy on a bridge. I read all about it this afternoon.
Yeah, I guess stopping on the bridge and saying you have a bomb stops trafficking.
That's going to put a halt to
town.
A couple of things. That's going to put a screeching halt to a couple of things. So
yeah.
Having read it, like I said, I was just mentioning to our guest here and to Scotty here, I'm rocking some serious specs today because I lost my glasses there somewhere in Australia. So there you have some what do they call it? A snapping handbag with probably my glasses in its teeth. So,
I think there's a bit more to that story, but we can get into that later. I think.
Can Canadians plead the fifth? Can we plead the fifth on this?
Yeah, fair enough.
Today, well, listen, guys. Again, Scotty, thanks for co-hosting today, and thanks for kind of introducing us to our guest here. This gentleman I'm looking at his resume. I'm looking at his expertise in the career accomplishments. It's a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the VMRO podcast. You're Mr. Ephraim Nowak. Welcome, buddy.
Thank you, Val.
Woo.
I'm glad to be here.
There you are. What neck of the woods do you find yourself in today, sir?
Well, right now I'm actually in McMinnville, Oregon, so about an hour south of Portland.
Okay. Out swinging the West Coast. Any of the smoke coming up your way?
No, actually, we had blue skies here almost the past 2 weeks, which is quite surprising.
Okay.
But it's been a very mild winter, although I hear that's about to change next week, so we'll see.
You left coasters get these different, like you get these atmospheric rivers you deal with. That's crazy.
Yes. Yep.
Is that what's on its way?
I think there's snow in the forecast for all of next week, from what I've heard. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
I heard we're shuffling a lot of snow down your way.
Oh. Okay.
Well, I was away here. I was reading. I could not believe it. I kind of confirmed it with the wife. There was snow as far down as Florida.
Yep.
Wow.
New Orleans?
No kidding. No kidding. I texted my good buddy Chris down in Miami there, and I said, the secret to lifting is with your legs, not your back. So, I can't go too easy on the guys from Florida, nonetheless. So I know we're still kind of operating towards the end of the day here, guys, but I want to ask you, does anybody have anything in the cups that we're going to talk about, or are we going to we're gonna bypass that.
You know what? I'm still drinking some coffee here. I'm still got a long
still
night ahead of me.
Oh yeah, okay. So in case you didn't know, Scott is the director of maintenance here for major helicopter operators. So he's probably gonna have some type of sobriety onto his side there in case the call out happens. And F, I know you're kind of, like I said, you're towards the end of the day there, so let's not keep you long and lingering here. But nonetheless, welcome to Vertical MRO. Glad to have you.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Looking at everything you've accomplished, we're going to get right into the weeds of it here, dude, because this is a pretty hot topic on our last couple of guests here. But first and foremost, let's kind of get talking about who you are and how you got to where you're at right now, and just along the way, and just brag a little bit about yourself, please. Jump in.
Sure, for sure. So I'm an engineer. I work on unmanned aircraft, essentially, and have found myself, specializing in unmanned helicopters over the past 5 years or so. So really, my career trajectory started in, small drones, and eventually, I got into the larger than 55 drone category. And over the past 4 years, I've worked on about 5 different large unmanned helicopter projects. So that's really what I'm super passionate about.
Wow. Talk about kind of being a pioneer a little bit in that whole department when it comes to unmanning the helicopters right now. And that is like our last guest there. I know Scott was actually not Scott, but John and I kind of got into the conversation with Mike Broderick on a couple of things as far as what's going to be required to kind of keep those things up and flying. So jumping into your role here, this is you're going to be a man in the know.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. It's kind of an interesting space, from a maintenance perspective as well. I would say a lot of the components are the same, or components that you're already familiar with. But it's just, a higher collection of them all in one place. Things like communication systems, SATCOM systems, those have been around for decades, but now combining all of those together in an automated system, you're going to start seeing a lot more things like electric actuators, for example, and components like that.
I still notice you don't have a single gray head on your hair, and you still have a full head of hair. So good on you.
I feel like every time I'm out flight testing, I find at least a couple more gray hairs. So
When you started down the path, why did you choose the firefighting out of all the different unmanned things out there? Because that's definitely your passion. Like, what drove you that way?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I grew up in the interior of British Columbia. So we had, wildfires every summer, and that was just part of, what the yearly cycle was like. And my family lived through the 2003 Okanagan Mountain Park firestorm, which at the time caused the largest mass evacuations in Canada since the Second World War. That fire got to within about 100 yards of my family's doorstep. And so that really was a formative event in my childhood for me, and eventually, put me on this trajectory of developing technologies to help fire agencies, and then eventually starting a company called RAIN, which develops, systems that enable aircraft to fight fires autonomously.
That's going to be a key. You got to have a kind of a niche part of your brain that says, I think I'm going to design something autonomous to fly and fight fires on that. I want to kind of get into it with you on your background into that. So when it comes into the particular side of schooling onto that, AME jumping into another version or a subversion of it, please explain that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, actually, it all kind of started while I was doing my master's degree in electrical engineering. And at the time, I was working on computer vision systems for drones. And so I was seeing, a lot of these sensors like inertial measurement units and camera systems that were getting smaller and smaller. And really what I came up with was this idea to take all of these sensors, combine them into a box, and put them on existing firefighting aircraft to collect information about the wildfire, collect imagery, thermal imagery, infrared imagery, color cameras, combine all of that, and then send it to the incident commanders in the ground, so they have real-time information on the fire's location, behavior, rate of spread. And that was probably one of the first times that I met Scott. Actually, was I came up to him with this little plastic box, and I'm like, can we put this on your helicopter?
I remember that conversation. That was, who are you and what is this?
Yes, exactly.
Wow. So a lot of it, raw data, was collected just from like slapping a box onto a helicopter.
Yeah, exactly. And so the first fire season, we figured out a way to make it happen, and got a bunch of really interesting data that we ended up presenting to the British Columbia Wildfire Service. And they ended up funding a pilot project for the following year because they were so interested by that data.
Wow. You couldn't have picked a more rich environment, that's for sure, because I know the fires have not been getting lighter and lighter out in that neck of the woods. Scott, you just kind of, was it last year's blaze that kind of skimmed a lot of West Kelowna?
Yeah. So was that 2 years ago?
It was 2 years ago. So yeah, I stand corrected.
I think so. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then, from that pilot project, that was on a fixed wing platform, wasn't it? It went into?
Yes, exactly. So after we flew it on a helicopter for one season, the fire service was interested in putting it on one of their fixed wing bird dog aircraft, so it would circle at a higher altitude and constantly monitor the fire. So that was a really successful program. I ended up pivoting into using that technology for autonomous firefighting helicopters rather than continuing with simply the data collection part of it. But I've seen a lot of companies since then grow in that space and basically pick up the torch and continue providing systems like that.
Your role there, now I'm kind of doing a little bit of a back reading here, kind of discussing your activity and your role at Hummingbird Drones and the Institute of Underwater Research. Did that, can you kind of elaborate what your role is there and kind of how it morphed into where you're at now?
Yeah, for sure. So Hummingbird Drones was an internship that I did. They were actually the first company in Canada, to my knowledge, that were allowed to fly drones on active wildfires. So they had gone through the regulatory pathways to be able to coordinate, with manned firefighting aircraft and deconflict in time and space, to be able to fly those aircraft or fly drones, to map wildfires. And so they'd put up the drones at night. They would fly all night, map the hotspots, and by morning they'd have maps ready to go for the firefighters with all the hotspot locations.
Wow. Wow, that's some Cybertron kind of stuff there. Holy smokes.
I remember seeing those maps on some fires. Yeah, they would hand them out in the mornings there and to the different groups there heading out. Nice.
And so they would go out, come back with the raw data, give to the pilots or give to the crews to kind of get up and going for the next round of firefighting via fixed or via rotor wing.
That was with small rotary wing drones, so basically quadcopter style drones. So they would collect all the imagery. There's a bunch of post processing involved at the time, so bringing that all into GIS software, stitching it together, georeferencing it, and then being able to provide it to the crews in the morning.
Wow. That's impressive tech, dude, buddy. Way to go. Seriously good in that one. So now kind of like walk us through now your transition to the leadership roles at Rain and Precept, because this is some interesting stuff you're going to be talking about here. So take your time on it and please kind of elaborate as much as you can.
Thank you to our sponsors, Safe Structure Designs. Safe Structure Designs specializes in custom aircraft maintenance stands and hangar equipment, boosting hangar efficiency by 50% and enhancing technician safety. With over 20 years of experience alongside real-world aircraft technicians, SAFE develops industry-leading ergonomic safety solutions. Why not take advantage of SAFE's free custom design process for your safety and efficiency needs and let them create your ideal solution? Visit www.safe-2.com to learn more.
For sure, for sure. So, I was doing all these projects, mapping wildfires and collecting data. And at the time, one of my longtime friends had sold his previous startup company in Silicon Valley. And the two of us just started brainstorming, what would it take to solve the wildfire problem, rather than just developing technologies that are maybe incremental improvements. What would it take to make a 10x or 100x change? And this was back in 2019, and we saw a lot of investment and effort going into early wildfire detection technologies. So at the time, we were starting to see cameras being installed in remote regions to detect wildfires earlier. We were starting to see funding going into satellite detection technologies, using satellites to detect incipient wildfires. But we didn't really see much effort going into rapid response. And,
Really?
as we know, yeah. So as we know, rapid response, rapid initial attack is a concept that has existed in firefighting for decades.
Just not in the aerial department.
Correct, or at least in an unmanned, fashion. And so we really looked at, what would it take to pre-position automated aircraft in high wildfire risk regions so that they're never more than 2 or 3, maybe 10 minutes away from a potential ignition, with the goal of containing it while it's still small. And so that's really, what we started getting into at Rain. We built an initial proof of concept, which was a small hexacopter drone, and we monitored about a 40-acre plot of land for an ignition. Once that system detected the ignition, it dispatched the responder drone, which carried a small fire suppressant payload, and it autonomously, put out the fire. And we actually did a full end-to-end demonstration back in 2019 of a system detecting a fire, putting it out, and we were hands off the controls the entire time.
Full autonomous.
You sent me that video. Where was that?
So that was just as all the lockdowns were starting during COVID. So we had actually...
There's that C word again.
Yes. Yeah. So we had started building the company in Silicon Valley because of the wildfire problem in California and access to capital and investors and everything else.
Yeah.
We had a fire department lined up there to do the demo, and then COVID happened, and they got super nervous about having anyone coming into their small community to demonstrate this new technology. So we packed up a trailer full of all of our equipment and drove north to British Columbia. And
yeah, it looks
yes.
It looks like Summerland.
Exactly. So we ended up finding a place in the hills above Peachland to do this demo.
There you go.
And so we're crossing the border. We didn't know if the border guard would even let us come in because the COVID restrictions were still ambiguous at the time. And there were, so we have printouts of the regulations from the website with us and pointing to, the exception for emergency services and,
and it's all left to their interpretation at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it really got down to the wire because the burn bans were coming into effect early that year because the smoke from burning was causing respiratory issues that would exacerbate COVID symptoms.
Correct.
So we had about 3 days left to find a spot where we could do this demo before the burn ban came into effect. And the video that we did literally happened the morning of the burn ban, which came into effect at noon of that day.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't know that part of the story.
Geez, so you guys, you went 11 and a half hour.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So that original drone, when it found the fire, I remember it now. It came in. It lowered down and then dropped its payload. Is there somebody like you're saying that's fully autonomous? There's nobody at the controls.
Exactly. Yep. So we had programmed that. So we had we were watching all the live feeds. We had 4 monitors that we had set up out in the field. on this forestry road. We're just watching it. But yeah, that whole thing was done without anyone actually controlling the system.
So so when something like that kind of goes out and performs to say it's going out to suppress the fire, what validates it?
Right. Well, in this case, we had a system on board that would check if the flames were out. So the aircraft would go back up to a higher altitude, check if it would actually put out the fire. If it didn't, it would have gone back down and put more suppressant down. Now, obviously, that was a very simplistic demonstration back in 2019 to kind of prove at point that this technology exists and can be developed. And we've spent a lot of time refining that and looking at indirect suppression strategies as well that are much more common in firefighting operations today.
So when this thing is up and running and live, what does it take to kind of ignite, for lack of a better term, what does it take to ignite the call for that to happen?
So we had a detector drone that was at a super high altitude, and it was just monitoring this 40-acre plot of land for any heat wave like signature above a certain threshold that would indicate a fire. And then if it detected that, that's what basically kicked off the whole process.
So 40 acres is quite a bit of land for that to kind of patrol and manage at the same time.
Exactly.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So then we just picked a spot, lit a small fire, and then the whole thing just kind of happened.
It took care of itself.
I do have a question. So you got your, I don't know what, the detector drone?
Yeah.
And the other one, does it self-dispatch or does it send and then you dispatch? You know what I mean?
Exactly. In the case of that demo, it's self-dispatched. So the detector drone dispatched the responder drone.
Wow.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's like having a D-bot clean your own house just on somebody dropping a crumb on the floor. So that's impressive. So like, I got to imagine there's going to be ideal conditions, in particular high and dry scenarios and high seasons, or if the temperatures are up and the winds are up, and that's got to be, how does like, like just recently you're looking at what's happening just south of you, not far away from the Palisades and the LA fires, and some of those Santa Ana winds that can get up to, 150, 160 kilometers an hour. How does a drone, how does that kind of maneuver through there?
Yeah. So that's, really, we got into a lot of simulation and modeling on existing wildfires and using previous wildfire data to try and figure out what does it really take to contain ignitions like that before they go out of control. And, the fact of the matter is, it looks a lot more like autonomous aircraft rather than flying fire extinguishers.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, a lot of people think, you have like maybe 100 or 1,000 small drones, fire extinguisher size payload that can go out and put these fires out. And the reality is that these wildfires that do get out of control nowadays are, the 5% of fires that happen in the most challenging conditions. And those are your Santa Ana winds. Those are red flag warning events with extremely dry, extremely dry weather conditions. And so as we did that modeling, we started figuring out more and more and validating more and more that, that a system like this looks more like unmanned aircraft rather than drones.
I know there's a period of time there during these fires there where aircraft couldn't fly just for the sheer wind shear of it all. So I got to imagine you got to be following the same guidelines.
Yes, for sure. And, the interesting thing is a lot of that is the startup and shutdown period, especially for helicopters, is really where the wind limitation is the biggest factor. Once the blades are spinning, that's a different story. But also what's really interesting is that automated flight control systems like the autopilots that are used in unmanned aircraft are actually, much better at maintaining a stable flight of an aircraft than pilots.
Yeah, I didn't think you were going to say that. You saw Scott start to chuckle up already. If John was on this podcast, we'd give it to him, right, Scotty?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so go ahead, carry on. Yep.
Well, so look at it this way, right? Like when you're flying in a commercial jetliner and you look out the window, you can see the flaperons, constantly moving, right? And that's an automated flight control system that's smoothing out all the bumps, all the turbulence, and you can barely feel, any sort of turbulence. Just imagine, a human pilot trying to do that manually. And that's really what autopilots are able to do, right? Like they're able to process things at 4,000 times a second and make adjustments at hundreds of times per second. And so especially if you have any sort of a side wind, for example, or crosswinds, that's something that autopilots are able to deal with extremely effectively.
Go ahead, Scotty. It looks like you got a question.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that and what you're saying there. So when you're taking that technology that you're developing, is there a preferred platform or preferred autopilot system that's easier to integrate into?
So we've actually focused really hard to make our system platform agnostic. So RAIN is focusing on the high-level mission autonomy. So being able to take in data from onboard thermal sensor cameras and from predictive fire modeling, for example, on the ground, and using that to make high-level mission objectives, where to put suppressant, how much, how quickly, when is the next aircraft about to arrive, and factoring in all these different parts of the equation to optimize that fire suppression strategy. So it's kind of like Uber, for example, load balances their network for ride sharing, except, we're load balancing a network of
great example, man.
Autonomous firefighting assets.
Yeah, great example. Because I was going to ask you, sorry to jump in here, Scotty. I was going to ask you, how do you coordinate? Because that's a dance in the skies. You have pathfinders, you have massive DC-10s dropping buckets of loads of water, and then you add the rotary aspect of everything from a 225 to Blackhawks to 412s and 212s, and even some guys slinging Bambi buckets. Now, how do you coordinate that with those major aircrafts, and your aircraft being probably a quarter of the size of that and kind of occupying that same airspace?
Yeah, it's still we're doing everything to fit into the existing operating pictures. So flight levels being dispatched by an air attack group supervisor. And that supervisor also being able to provide high level intent to the autonomous system is really the goal. So that's been what a lot of the focus at RAIN has been, is developing the technologies that allow a system like this to integrate with existing firefighting practices, with existing air assets, so that it's not, a distraction, but rather a force multiplier.
Good, Scotty, you got something?
I'm thinking there with that overhead team, everything, are you going to get to a point where you're moving crews?
Yeah, I mean, that would be... I could definitely see that in the future. The technology, or at least I would say the regulations right now are still the piece that's limiting it. But as certification pathways open up for transporting people, maybe without a pilot, the front seat, I could definitely see the industry going there. I think it's still a ways off, and kind of as RAIN progressed, we've worked with larger and larger aircraft platforms, right? So starting with something in the 1,000-pound category to now being integrated on Sikorsky's Matrix-equipped, optionally piloted Black Hawk helicopter.
It's pretty amazing to think that in 2019 you started. 6 years later you got an autonomous Black Hawk. Like that's pretty crazy.
That's insane. That's insanely impressive. That's what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Fully autonomous 60 like that, and that's not a small aircraft. We just started seeing them up here in Manitoba with the border patrols now. And imagine that as a full autonomous firefighting machine. Well done, sir. Let's get into the ribs of it here. Let's get into the ribs of it. So, like, when we're talking about the repair and the overhaul of these things here, what's the power plant that you guys are generally using?
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability, so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry, From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
Yeah, so for example, with the Black Hawk, it's all stock components, but really, the key to making any sort of an aircraft autonomous is, the first step is a fly-by-wire system, right? So, traditional helicopters are usually push-pull tubes or, augmented with hydraulic systems, for example. But the first step to making an aircraft autonomous or automated, I should say, is, adding electric actuators, which is a fly-by-wire system. And then any sort of level of autopilot or autonomy system, builds on top of that foundation. So, I kind of got into this earlier. A lot of these components are systems that maintenance teams are already familiar with.
Well, and especially if you're using a 60 already, you have the authorized shops or the gray shops or even any engine shop to kind of really maintain, plus the transmission and moving parts and dynamics and avionics and stuff like that. So it's just a matter of kind of which department you're kind of really in after on them. So like even for as small as or as big as the 60s, is there any with the smaller size UAVs there is what are you guys flying with those?
Yeah, it really depends on the manufacturer. So with Rain, we've integrated with about 4 or 5 systems along the way as we progressed, 2 of them being UH-60s. And it's kind of a similar story, it's the regulatory environment is looking for TSO components. They're looking for avionics that have, an STC or some sort of environmental qualification behind it. So I think really that's what we're going to see is unmanned aircraft are following existing regulatory pathways and maybe certifying their these upgrades through supplemental type certificates, for example.
Okay. Do you think it's going to be a little tougher to certify them because they're unmanned? Asking the obvious question.
Certainly. Yeah, it's going to be a combination of existing processes plus waivers potentially for some things that don't apply. A good example of this is the requirement for seatbelts, for example. There's a requirement in the agricultural spray operations, which in the U.S. is what firefighting falls under, that the aircraft must be equipped with seatbelts. So for an unmanned aircraft, that obviously doesn't apply. And so that would be an example of something that would get waived.
Right.
Yeah.
Going through a full tooth and comb type of procedure there just to find out, because you're right, there's going to have to be elimination of anything human factors based inside of it. And it's going to be full autonomous onto it. Interesting.
I'm just wondering, like this technology, you started off, what was the first helicopter you guys converted?
Well, there was actually, so the first one that was mostly publicly shared was a Mosquito helicopter.
That's
which
right.
was a kit build, experimental 1-seat helicopter. And that system has about a 400-pound payload capacity. And really for us, the goal there was a demonstrator. It was a system that allowed us to test our technology quickly on a platform with, similar flight characteristics as a larger helicopter. The intent was always to be able to equip a larger aircraft with the technology. And that's kind of where we've moved to today.
Yeah. Like going from Mosquito to a Hawk. Shit.
When you're doing this proof of concept, is there anything about flying over built up areas versus open spaces? Are people looking at that for unmanned or not? I don't know.
So a lot of the prototype aircraft are operating in the experimental category. So there are certain restrictions on the experimental category, operations over densely populated areas being one of them. A number of firefighting aircraft in general in the U.S. operate on restricted type certificates if they're like an ex-military aircraft, for example. But really, the goal is type certification, and I think that's where the industry is headed, especially for these unmanned systems. It's going to be a long process. There are a lot of new technologies involved, but these are pathways that have been well proven over the years.
Are you working on any type of certification? I know with the FAA, are you looking at EASA and Transport Canada? Any other foreign certifications come along the way?
Yeah, well, so the good thing getting back to what we're doing with RAIN is like mission level autonomy is kind of a higher level than the lower level flight control systems that control the aircraft. And so there are actually less certification requirements at that high level because the lower level systems are taking care of the aircraft. So you'll have a highly certified low level flight control system that's potentially certified to the same level as commercial airliners that's preventing the aircraft from crashing itself. And then you can have higher level systems that provide intent or provide direction to a flight control system like that, for example.
Gotcha.
So what you're designing the brain that's giving the inputs down. Yeah. That's interesting.
Giving that neurofire type of responses.
Yes,
wow.
For sure.
So when you're looking at these particular helicopters, and I kind of answered my own question here. Generally, they'd be going into the same type of circumstances that certain components are going to reach TSO or time life retirement or retired completely. You're just basically sending so when it comes to the AME or AMP section of that, do you yourself look at the machines, or you guys have actual certified mechanics to go look after it and that kind of thing, or explain that kind of process a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, typically, there will be certified mechanics that do the work on these systems, even though they're experimental aircraft. These are, these are the same processes as with a manned aircraft. We don't really take any shortcuts just because there's no one on board. And I think industry wide, that's kind of where companies are headed.
So if you go ahead, Val.
I was going to say yet another reason why somebody should get into the market if they're looking at becoming an AME or AMP here is to kind of look at, now you can kind of work on not only manned helicopters but unmanned helicopters too, because the demand is just as high.
Yes. Yep, for sure.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's the unmanned helicopters out flying and it has an unscheduled chip light or an event. What happens?
Yeah, good call. Good question.
So yeah, that's a great question. So chip lights, those basically are all tied into the system that automates the aircraft. So let's just take an example for the unmanned helicopter helping Phoenix Solutions develop here in Oregon. They're basically building a clean sheet coaxial unmanned helicopter that's designed to be 3,000 pounds max takeoff weight. And so a system like that has all of the same components as you would have on a manned aircraft, except it's designed specifically without people as a requirement. So you have a much more compact aircraft. Your center of gravity is optimized to be unmanned, so you're using all of that available lift for your payload. And so in a system like that, it's just the same. You'd get a chip light on your ground control station, and the operator then can make a decision about how to proceed with that. And then taking that a step further, you can have the system be pre-programmed with automations to take care of any sort of in-flight emergencies like that.
That kind of leads me to the next one there. Thanks for asking that there, Scott, because it's a good question. The other part of, like, say in an unscheduled event where they have to kind of like maybe auto rotate down, how does that evaluate where to put that aircraft down?
So the autopilot systems in general are capable of doing auto rotations. I haven't seen many companies demonstrate it yet.
Okay.
There is one company in California that has demonstrated a fully autonomous auto rotation to the ground.
Interesting.
And they had safety pilots on board, and it looked like a very exciting ride.
That's putting it completely mild, yeah, but okay. Imagine being up there. Don't touch a single thing until you need to, Scotty.
I couldn't do it, but I need to believe.
Yeah, sorry, F. Go ahead, buddy.
Yes, but flight control systems like that are, capable of auto rotation. And now humans have to teach it how to do that. And that's a process.
That's some brass cojones there on that one. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So
Like, I'm thinking of like this technology you're talking about, and I've heard about this in the medical world. Is this going to be embraced? Anything that you're doing with this, not patient transfer, but organ transfer, hospital to hospital?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. So we've seen even with some of the smaller drones, that's one of the first markets, and there are already some organ transfer flights going on with drones just between medical facilities.
wow,
So I definitely see that being one of the first markets.
good application. Great application. You talked about it earlier, but I'm going to get you to talk a little bit about Phoenix Solutions and its mission operations there. Kind of give us kind of a little walkthrough what that involves and what is Phoenix. Give us a little heads up.
So Phoenix is a company based in Oregon that's developing a clean sheet design unmanned coaxial helicopter with the goal of being a heavy lift logistics aircraft. So 3,000 pounds max takeoff weight gives you a lot of flexibility to carry payloads for civilian uses like firefighting or cargo, as well as military applications.
Good little group founded. It's 2019. Did I hear you say that's when it was founded?
Don't actually recall when Phoenix was founded.
A few years now. Okay.
Yes. Some of the original founders of Phoenix Solutions were on the executive team at Simplex Aerospace. So they're very familiar with the helicopter industry and specifically the aerial firefighting industry, having developed firefighting mission equipment for many decades.
I'm just thinking, you've said a couple times, clean sheet build. Now, what does that mean? Are you saying to build a helicopter or an autonomous helicopter from scratch and not adapting one? Is that
exactly? Yep. So clean sheet would be starting from the ground up with a brand new design instead of adapting maybe an existing helicopter and making it autonomous.
So when you're building it, when you're designing this helicopter like you're doing now, are you taking off-the-shelf components that are designed for different other applications and building, or are you actually designing the components yourself?
Yeah, so the intent is to build a fully certifiable system. And so, that aircraft in particular is using, certified aviation grade components that already have GSOs on them, for example. It's widely published that that aircraft uses an existing Rolls-Royce engine, for example.
Yeah.
So that would be something that existing helicopter mechanics would be very familiar with.
Are you in the 250 series or the 300 series?
Yeah, it's a 300 series engine.
Okay. I know that some places overhauls them.
So the AME getting into this, he's like, hey, you know what? I want to come join your team. How do you need a type endorsement? Like, how does that work? Like, in Canada, you get type endorsements. Like, how do you get the training for a purpose-built autonomous helicopter? Like, how does somebody get up that ladder?
Right. Yeah. So right now we're still in the prototype phase. So, it's an experimental category aircraft. But as it goes into production, and goes through type certification, it would be just the same as it would be on a manned helicopter. So there would be a training program and I would assume a type endorsement for AMEs.
Looking this over here, F, this is pretty impressive. Like I said, we spoke about the cargo aspect of it all. The surveillance, obviously, if there's a hotspot, you guys going to pop one up there here. Armament, didn't think about that one. Search and rescue and natural disaster relief response. That's got to be all grid work there. That's pretty impressive if you have to pop one of those up. And it just, I guess, it's the same application when you're looking in a particular, say, some type of disaster situation. You're looking for hotspots, or you're looking for movements in the same respect of like what a wildfire would kind of spark up on.
Yeah, for sure. And then, a system with a payload like this could obviously carry a firefighting tank or a Bambi bucket and actually be able to carry suppressant on board as well.
And for identifying anybody who's in the SAR situation there, it's got to have GPS it right to the particular point where somebody can kind of come get them with another helicopter.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or at least kind of send the foot troops along or something.
Yeah, exactly. And platforms like this are able to carry, big ISR gimbals like, the flares and Westcams, just like you would have on say like a police helicopter, for example.
That's awesome. This is all, like I said, this is such a hot topic right now because of, listen, the environment is changing around us, whether we want to admit it or not, and we got to be on top of these things. They're going to be, burning faster and longer now with stuff not being cleared out, the proposal of the brush not being cleared out, but now you're creating more of a fire hotbed. When you're having this type of technology kind of available to you, what's next on the horizon? What do you think is going to be the next in the technological advancements of particularly unmanned aircrafts to kind of be in a pivotal role?
Right. Well, I would say right now, especially as of last year, we've seen a lot more of the regulations developing in the space. So at this
Okay.
point, it's an inevitable future. And I think we're going to see a lot more developments in sort of the medium to large drone industry, um, and getting into that, unmanned helicopter, size of aircraft. Um, I would say there's going to be a lot of interest, in applications like firefighting, so the dull, dirty, dangerous tasks, right? Where if you can have an automated system taking care of that without putting a pilot's life at risk, I think that's where we're going to see some of the first applications of autonomy.
I'm gonna geek out here. Anybody who's ever watched the Avengers movies, there with Tony Stark getting into his fully autonomous 427. Anybody? No? Did I just
No.
geek out? Sorry about that. Okay. But
So like with this new wave you're talking about, and I agree it's going to happen. Like autonomy is the future. How do you suggest somebody gets involved in that?
That's a great question. it's it's still such a developing field that a lot of these companies are still in the sort of prototype phase, experimental category phase. Even looking at like electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, for example, there's no one who's really into serialized production of a system like that. So, um, I would say if someone's really wants to be on the cutting edge, it would be joining a company like that who's developing a system, and potentially also for those who have a lot of experience in the field, who could help develop the policies and procedures to maintain this new generation of aircraft.
it really goes. And so now I got to propose a question here. Like, where is AI and all of this coming up here pretty soon?
Yes. Oh yeah, exactly. It's a big part of it. It's the certification aspect of it is still a big question mark, because everything in aviation has to be deterministic, or at least up to this point. You have to be able to explain exactly, given this input, this is the expected outcome. With AI, where you have potentially multiple different types of outcomes, I think we're going to start seeing kind of a layered approach. And like I kind of explained earlier, having a highly certified flight control system with multiple layers stacked on top of it that maybe require less certification. I think that's kind of what we're going to start seeing.
Are you getting buy-in? So this technology, you show up and Canada maybe not on the forefront of some of this stuff, and now you're down in the U.S. and with the higher dense populations, are people, do they want the technology or are they pushing back?
Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140 plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
So especially lately, in the wake of the Palisades fire, we've seen a lot of interest in autonomous aerial firefighting. I think there's still some education needed on what size and scale of aircraft would be required to be effective. there's a ton of interest in it right now, and I think we're going to see some very exciting announcements in 2025 on autonomous firefighting programs.
Oh, good for you.
Did you just put a hook? Did you just put a hook in our listeners? Alf, look at you. It's like you're a seasoned podcaster talking that way.
Right.
Stay tuned for more to come.
I can't tell you, but it's coming.
Yeah. We'll sell you the whole seat. You'll just need the edge.
Yeah. Well, just in the past year, Rain and Sikorsky have made some significant announcements and demonstrations, showing their technology in high wind conditions, for example, and in kind of a test environment. And I think we're going to start seeing technology like this moving closer and closer to being deployed in the real world.
That was a massive deterrent at the start of these fires, just because of the high winds. When they were reaching north of 100 miles an hour, was that 160 kilometers an hour? You can't fly in that. How are you supposed to fly in that? How are you supposed to, it'd be interesting to see what type of technology, how technology is going to battle that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, Scotty. I cut you off there. It looks like you're going to.
No, I'm quite fascinated by the whole thing. And I think the biggest curve is going to get buy-in from the agencies. Nobody wants, my kids believe in autonomy, where I'm a bit older and I'm having trouble embracing that. I wouldn't get in a carless taxi or driverless taxi. And I think that's a mindset. And I that's going to be a big shift.
Do you think that could be just more than a mind shift? It's a generational culture.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. It's the technology to do something like this has existed for a very long time. If you look at the military application, all the key ingredients for a system like this have been used for decades at this point. But bringing that into the civilian market, there's a lot of a shift in thinking about how fires are fought, both by fire agencies as well as by decision makers in government, and also how budgets are allocated. Because firefighting right now is very much reactionary, with emergency funding coming after the fact or during an event.
Yeah.
If only a small fraction of that were to be allocated towards prevention, and part of prevention being pre-positioning assets in regions. You could have, instead of spending billions or potentially trillions, after the fact, you could make a big change by just allocating a small portion of that up front.
When you're looking at everything that you've just accomplished, like I said, in the short 6 years of 2019 to today, which is very impressive, by the way, and you're kind of, again, you're on the hot seat of everything that's kind of burning right now and how to make this fully autonomous. Is ultimately you're saving lives, having less pilots, less crews kind of get up into machine and looking at firefighting and taking over the human's position on that. Any personal insights or advice to kind of think about how you can kind of, what's the next level? We spoke a little bit about just being aware of it, but what's the next level of, I think for one of our guests uses them, but what's the next iPhone moment?
Yes. Well, I think I would say that, more and more autonomy is something we're going to see. And I've kind of used the words automation and autonomy in various parts of our discussion today. Automation is really the first step. Automation is, you're taking the things that a human pilot would do and you're automating it. But then, just like in a self-driving car, there are different levels of autonomy. I think next we're going to see things like human augmented autonomy, where a human operator is providing some inputs to the system, or maybe high-level inputs. And, eventually, but I think it's still a ways off, we're going to see fully autonomous systems.
Yeah, I'm curious. You're talking about this half, with a pilot involved, and now you have the ground control. How do the flight and duty regulations impact that? If you're, I have no idea, if you're a UAV driver, are you still mandated by the same regulations, or are you free to
a la carte?
Right.
Yes.
No, that's a great question. I think we're going to start seeing how the regulators think about it. I think it's still somewhat of an open question. And I think, an extension to that is one-to-many sort of control, right? One operator controlling multiple aircraft. And, I think that's where we're headed. And it'll be really interesting to see, how the regulators decide to manage that.
As you say, with a bit of a smirk on your face while you're advising it.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking the pilot fatigue, if they're fighting fire all day, they're just wrecked at the end of the day. But if you're sitting in an air-conditioned office looking after drones, I'm not saying you have more worked hard, but the fatigue on the body's a lot less.
Yeah. Yep. Again, goes right back to what I was just saying as far as just saving human lives, including that of the rescuer as well. So not going up and down, cycling how many more times, and then kind of, stressing out airframe and so on and so forth. You have now machine kind of regulating that and kind of like, hey, we're getting close to TSO on this, or, this is now looking at showing signs of fatigue thereof. That kind of data automatically gets reported right back to the operator. And then I guess it's up to you to kind of really schedule it with whoever you have set up as a shop.
Exactly. Yep.
So,
and, vibration monitoring, for example, autopilots are really great at doing vibration monitoring. So now you can have a system like that just built into the system. And if there's any sort of anomaly, that gets flagged.
Yeah.
Nice. Going back now, because you seem like a generally younger fella. Looking back at all that you've kind of accomplished and stuff like that, anything you change on the way in? It's a deep question.
That's a loaded question.
Sorry, it's a deep question, but at the same time, it's just for anybody. Because and the reason why I asked that, I'm sorry to kind of put a bit of a vice on you here. The reason why I asked that, because you always have that introspective moment of, well, I could have done it this way, but I kind of did it this way. I learned how to do it that way. So it just kind of promotes the fact of, in our careers, stuff's ever changing, stuff is always evolving. And stuff is either, you gotta catch up or you're getting left behind. So that's the reason for the question.
Yeah, for sure. My parents always wanted me to become a doctor, and I did pre-med in university. I took the MCAT and I did well on the MCAT.
Okay.
And
so we could have been calling you Dr. F here.
And then I got to a decision point. I had an offer on the table to do my master's degree in electrical engineering and go the robotics route, or to go into med school. And I just thought to myself, I really believe I would enjoy engineering and robotics a lot more. And looking back on it, I have no regrets about making that decision. And I'm just glad to see that taking that chance on this, emerging field has actually, has actually started to develop and mature.
And your parents are okay with you not being a doctor?
Well, my brother has become a doctor.
Oh, he did.
So I think that has taken care of this.
Okay.
Very, very nice. Well, listen, it's like we're going to start wrapping down here, but you've covered quite a bit here. But I'm just going to ask you, any tips for those looking into the fields of engineering or what you're currently into? Any kind of, hey, keep it going, or else kind of consider this to kind of jump in?
Yeah, I would say, even during your education, you try and find ways of working on projects. I think any sort of employer is always going to ask you, what have you done? And if you can show them instead of just telling them, I think that's really important. So, building up a portfolio of projects and photos that you can actually share and say, I worked on this or I created this, I think is really important. And it's, investing in yourself, investing in your own education, continually, trying to learn new skills and kind of broaden your horizons, I think is key.
All solid keys.
Yeah. So, hey, I got, everybody has a dream. You followed it. What's the difference there?
Oh, good. Good one.
Cool. You did it. So
you still
what's
doing
your
it.
advice there?
It's not over.
But you took the plunge. You're down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. Yep.
It's, behind every successful company, every successful, individual, a lot of hard work that, people never see.
The iceberg effect, they only see.
Yes. Yeah. And, in the case of Rain, over 5 years of hard work, and we're just kind of starting to see some of the fruits of that labor. So, it's just being persistent. And if you have a passion for something, or you want something to become reality, it's a lot of hard work to get there.
Support system, and you have anybody you want to give a quick shout out to? We're all about shout outs on the show.
For sure. Well, my co-founders at Rain, Max and Brian,
there you go,
who have been along for the whole ride. It's been an incredible journey.
They inherited the gray hairs?
I'm sure they've got their share too. Although, I have to say,
I'm staying away from the ball joke, Scotty. I really am. I'm trying hard.
You know what?
Testing.
Yeah. I'm looking. You guys both have a pretty good head of hair, so you know what? Slay off the bald guy.
I'm not going down the road with you, buddy. I know how hard you work for that look. That's awesome. That is fantastic. Well, and like you said, everybody that's ever successful in life has a support system, and whether it's people or whether it's a group of people or whether it's a passion or a belief, and that comes up to quite a bit in every one of our podcasts. You got to have a passion to do what you're doing, because we're pretty crazy to do what we're doing. So to that, we tip our hat to you.
Thank you.
Anything, last couple of questions there, Scotty? What do you got?
No, it's just, I've known you for 15 years. I can't even remember now, but you've gone from a guy who showed up with a box to a guy who's one of the lead autonomous helicopter engineers in the world. Like, that's pretty crazy.
Yep.
So hats off to you. It's small Kelowna boy, man, made it happen.
There you go.
Yeah.
Little K-Town love. Get some.
Yeah.
Get some. Absolutely. Listen, on behalf of everybody that's listening to the show, and on behalf of both of us, Scotty and myself, man, keep doing what you're doing, man. You're making a direct impact in our industry, and we do appreciate it, especially when you come into situations, or like what Scott just said, you start off with the man with the box, and now you're going full autonomous, UH-60s to kind of put up and help fighting fighters. So I've said it before, and I'll say it again, not all heroes wear capes, but keep doing what you're doing, and you're a hero, my friend. So
thank you.
All right.
Last but not least, I know Scotty kind of failed this question in my podcast with him. Does pineapple belong in a pizza?
I'm going to say no.
Yes. Up yours, Hayward.
and pizza is my favorite food. So
yeah, see, I don't mind pineapple. I can eat pineapple by itself, but it just doesn't belong in a pizza.
A nice summer day and having pineapple on the patio. It's beautiful.
See, pineapple belongs in the drink, not on the pizza.
All right.
Awesome. F, you're a fantastic guest. Welcome to the VMRO family here. I really appreciate having you on. To our listeners, thanks for listening. Scotty, thanks for co-hosting today again, buddy. Always love to see your smiling face. And hit that subscribe button. And if you got any suggestions for any upcoming guests, or any things that, I guess the next big thing is we got coming up is Verticon. That's not too far away. F, are you going to be at that?
Unfortunately, I am doing a demo for the Army.
Oh, unfortunately, he says.
But Phoenix will be there.
Okay.
And I believe Rain will be there in some fashion as well.
So look for Phoenix, look for Rain. Awesome at Verticon. And I guess anything else before I sign off here, Scott? You got anything else? We're good?
I'm good.
F?
No, I think that's
We're signing off? All right. Hit that subscribe button. Thanks again for listening to Vertical MRO. I'm Val. He's Ephraim. That's Scotty. We're out of here. Take care of yourself, guys. Stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsors, Safe Structure Designs. Safe Structure Designs specializes in custom aircraft maintenance stands and hangar equipment, boosting hangar efficiency by 50% and enhancing technician safety. With over 20 years of experience alongside real-world aircraft technicians, SAFE develops industry-leading ergonomic safety solutions. Why not take advantage of SAFE's free custom design process for your safety and efficiency needs and let them create your ideal solution? Visit www.safe-2.com to learn more. Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140 plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
And that wraps up our fascinating conversation with Ephraim Nowak, co-founder of RAIN and a true innovator in the world of autonomous firefighting drones. Talk about taking your industry to a new level. Congrats, Ephraim. It's pretty impressive on what you're doing. We hope you found his journey from the 2003 Okanagan Mountain Park firestorm to developing groundbreaking UAS technology as inspiring as we did. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate and review us on your favorite podcast app. Your support helps us reach more listeners passionate about vertical aviation and emerging technologies and maintenance. Don't forget to subscribe to Vertical MRO and stay updated on the latest developments in the world of maintenance, repair, and overhaul in the vertical lift industry. You can also follow us on social media like Instagram and YouTube. Hit up our Vertical HeliCASTS website to learn more about our podcasts. Join us next week as we explore another exciting topic in the world of vertical aviation. Until then, keep your eyes in the skies and your rotors turning in the blue skies. This is Vertical MRO. I'm Val, over and out.